And aside from that, this particular issue that your topic today and your theme is something that has been very close to my heart. And it's been over many years. Okay, so I've got perhaps the largest number of years of experience collectively out here, maybe. And also what's very interesting is that I've seen a lot of trends changing, a lot of viewpoints changing, and I'd be very happy to chat about it. I'm really pleased to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Sangeeta.
Thank you, Hima. And really, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. It's always interesting to be part of a discussion where one not just is able to share one's views, but also hear from so many interesting people. So I think that's really going to be interesting today. You said it all, as Atul and Madhulika said already. So there isn't that much more to say about myself, except to say that, when we spoke about dogs, and since we're talking diversity,
Right.
God help anybody who's not an animal lover, because we'll take over the world in these conversations. But I think it's also, today we will speak about gender diversity. But I think as we become interested in other things, and as we begin to love other things, diversity and speciesism and things like that, which are such huge subjects now in the world, are also something that at some point I guess we will address. But for today, happy to talk about just this one species, and about ourselves as women, I guess. So looking forward.
Thank you. Sanjeev.
Yeah, thanks. So you talked about me being very passionate and very very animated about the things that I believe in. I carry my opinions very strongly. Amongst all the opinions that I carry, I think the opinion that I carry most strongly is about the subject on diversity. Why I'm talking like this is that I not only work with them, but I also protect them in my organization. And I am a champion in uh, coming out with some amazing programs in their self-assurance, building up their confidence, and with the view to protect them, with the view to give them a very safe workplace inside and outside. And not only outside, when I say talk about outside, not only outside my office, but also in their own private domestic lives. So very touchy. I'm member of the POSH committee of my organization. I'm involved with various women forums, and it's a subject which is closest to my heart. So looking forward to speak on this.
Wonderful. So great to have all of you here today. I think this is a subject close to all our hearts here, and hence we are here, and I'm happy that we're able to have this discussion. Atul, I'll start with you. I know that you believe that diversity and inclusion is key to the sustainable growth of any organization. And I've read lots of stats. 40% of people believe, and this is, these are all these global studies that one has, and 40% of people believe that both men and women will hire men over women. Okay, and I mean, these are studies that show that also men are 30% more likely to be promoted to a managerial position over women. So, I mean, diversity at the workplace is not as simple as meeting the required quotas, right? So, how does one, so at the workplace, do you feel that these gender stereotypes still remain? I mean, is this a statistic that's, are you seeing that at the workplace? And what are your views on being able to smash these stereotypes on about these statistics that I gave you in terms of diversity at the workplace, not just as a tick mark, but real inclusivity at the workplace.
So good. So I'm glad, Hima, can I be heard well? Because I couldn't hear you very clearly. Can I be heard well? Yes, I can.
Yes,
so,
very clearly.
Yeah, great. So yes, quite clearly, your question: do gender stereotypes exist? Are they there? Definitely. They don't just exist. Gender stereotyping is rampant. Let me give you an example. And I usually am very kind with our hosts, and thank you, Hima, for calling me. But I must pull one card out of the deck, and that is the very invitation that MitKat and you rolled out in terms of the collateral. And now I'm just taking you to where gender stereotyping lasts. the very collateral that came in from an organization that is championing the cause and has got a panel discussion going live on that. The very invitation has a silhouette, understandably pink in color, because it's assumed to be of a woman, with a near hourglass figure, again a stereotype. And what does it have beyond that silhouette? It has very beautifully sketched muscles emanating, as a shadow, presumably seeming to be something like a male. And I assume the person who designed the creative was wanting to portray that, yes, their power does lie there. So the point I'm very clearly making is this, that stereotyping is so much within our system. We've grown with it all our lives. And therefore, even an invitation card for a panel discussion on diversity and inclusion does have huge, huge streaks of stereotyping. I mean, I don't want you to get rough with the person who designed it, but I'm only making a very valid point here.
Very valid point, well noted. Yeah.
So that's the first thing I want to say. See, we're all educated people here. We all understand what gender stereotyping is all about. But I'll just say, I'll give you a definition of sorts of what it is in just one line. It is a generalized view. So that's the key operative word in the entire definition. It is a generalized view. Everybody grows up believing it. It is a preconceived notion about an attribute, a characteristic maybe, or the roles that are supposed to be done by a particular gender, woman or male. I don't have a problem with all of that as long as it's about deciding, what color bedsheet your little baby girl has to be slept in, or what toys she picks up. Are they dolls, or you're getting machine guns for your son? It's okay. The problem is when gender stereotyping ends up being harmful, when it limits not just women's capacity, but also men's capacity to develop their personalized attributes and pursue their professional careers. That's where I have a problem. Wrongful gender stereotyping is a frequent cause of discrimination against women. Now, let's just talk about women. The point of the matter is diversity is actually a huge topic. Unfortunately, 99.9999999, I can keep going on, percent of everybody only talks about discrimination or gender equality with women when you talk about diversity. But if you were to ask me for my personal view, it is not even 10%. We've got two veterans on the call here. I've served in the army and so has Sanjeev. Uh, Diversity includes perspectives, but that's a totally different discussion by itself. So I wouldn't want to go there. Quite clearly, what I feel is that gender stereotyping presents a serious obstacle to the achievement of real gender equality. And then that subsequently breeds and feeds into gender discrimination. Now, I made a point that we have grown up all our lives with this gender stereotyping. So be it. Can we just smash it out? Like you said, Atul, should we just smash it out? Much that we would all love to smash it out, is it possible? I've always been a proponent of doing things that have an impact over a period of time. It's not that, okay, let's just work for the goal of smashing it out. It's not going to happen. You got to accept, make tiny milestones as you go along. It could be a business scenario. It could be tackling gender discrimination. Let us, for a moment, tell ourselves, okay, I do not want to adopt an approach of smashing gender stereotypes, but I want to get into something which is far more doable and possible, and that is of gender mainstreaming or gender integration, if you want to talk about it. Tiny, tiny baby steps. Let's move there. That's the only way it's going to happen. Otherwise, you can keep screaming your guts out. It's going to remain. And the fact of the matter is, we're all Indians here. वो है, लड़का ये करता है, लड़की ये करती है, and you grow up doing that. Let me give you an example from the pharma industry. I today, like you said, lead 6 business divisions, which are about 531 field managers and more than about 1,600 medical representatives out on the field. So this is the largest force by any standards. Now, how many women do I have there? 1,600 people out in the field, and I don't even have more than 10 women. Why does this happen? It happens only because of gender stereotyping. It's just that. And I can again give you a live example. There was a
Is it
senior.
stereotyping? Sorry, just one little thing. Is it stereotyping, do you think, or is it security issues? Do you think that women are afraid to be there
No,
because
it's
they
leading to
fear
that.
their own safety?
Yeah. So, you've probably put the cart before the horse. So I'll get there. And why is it so? So I can give that to you with an example. There was this person who was serving with me in the army, a JCO, who got in touch with me. He wanted his daughter to get a job, and she was a science graduate, a biology honors graduate at that. So I told him very clearly, the only thing that I can do for you is, if she's decent enough, I can definitely get her enrolled as a medical representative. I said, you think about it and you get back to me. He got back to me within the hour. He says, Saab, medical rep nahi, baki kuch aur karna to karo. So I said, why? And the why was actually gender stereotyping, because a woman doesn't do a medical representative's job. Well, does it stem from a security issue? Does it stem from, her discomfort in being ogled at in a room full of 40 men? These are various aspects that lead to it. But the fact of the matter is, today everybody believes that a woman cannot be a medical rep, and they're hugely successful. All these 20 girls I was going through, they think we very recently had our annual achievers aboard, where we send them, to a trip abroad. This year we couldn't, so we gave them some money in compensation. I realized that all these women who were there were superstar performers. I also went ahead and did an initiative because the entire gynecology therapy reports into me. I decided to have a small group of women, because gynecologists, again, gender stereotyping. 90% of the 30,000 gynecologists that we have in India are women. So I said, maybe I can get some medical representatives who are ladies to reach out to the doctors, because doctors are our customers, really speaking. They're not our consumers of our products, but they prescribe our products. But that didn't work again because I couldn't source enough people. Anyway, so I don't want to take too much of time, but the important thing that I actually want to sort of convey is, if we do need to smash gender stereotyping, we need to do it in a progressive manner, small baby steps of gender integration, time by time. How can we do that? I'll just spend 2 more minutes, if I have Hima, on that, just to tell you, in my view, how can we do it at corporate houses. Firstly, I'm of the strong belief that gender stereotyping, at least in India, is all about the visual optics of it. What do I mean by that? You enter any office, you look at the toilets, you'll find a guy, an object wearing a pant, or a woman, colored in pink, wearing a skirt. That will lead you to the female's washroom and the gentleman's washroom. So it's optics. You all think it's optics, but it has a deep down effect within everybody's psyche, because everything in the office, there is reinforcement happening. Pink is a woman can't do this, she needs that, we need to get out of that. How can you best do it? You need to create inclusive groups. If you are in an organization that works on projects, your projects have to have an equal dimension of both genders. In fact, it has to have a diverse composition. But since we are talking only women and gender stereotyping, please ensure that there are enough women. Apart from the perspectives that you will get, you will automatically realize that these teams are doing well. Surveys have been conducted and I have them on record, but I don't want to just quote them. But the fact of the matter is, teams that are more diverse tend to be far more effective than the others. The other point is, start using more inclusive language in the way you talk. Why should it be a gentleman's agreement? Why should it be the middleman? Why should it be drama queen just because there's a lady who's a little more expressive than everybody else? Until we bring these changes in dialect, in our spoken English, and have far more inclusive language, it's not going to impact. See, it's nothing like, okay, I will ensure diversity, I will ensure gender equality by putting an injection into somebody. It's not going to work that way. We need to make these baby steps of optics, the various senses I'm talking about. What do you see at work? What do you talk at work? What is the language you use at work? All that is going to start impacting you in little ways. Let me give you another example. We need to sort of improve or change, I won't say really improve, but change the way even feedback is given. All of us lead
Right.
very large teams here, and people in the audience, I'm sure, also, if they're not leading large teams, have been part of large teams where they get feedback from their managers. Just do a playback in your mind and ask yourself, the last time you gave feedback to a woman employee in your team and a male employee on your team, how different was it? You take it from me, not as gospel, but based on experience of my own experience. If there is a woman, and it's not because I'm supposed to be chivalrous because I've served in the army, but 99% males do that. Just because there's a lady sitting across the table taking feedback, you tend to, soften it up a little bit. You're trying to, make it a little more nice. But when there's a guy sitting over, you straight professional with him, boss, तूने ये नहीं किया, वो नहीं किया, इस तरह करो. That also needs to change. There has to be gender equality right across, and it is these baby steps only that are going to take us there. It's not going to manifest one fine day. The fact and the point I'm making very squarely and clearly is, it is not easy to challenge stereotypes. We've grown with it, each one of us across continents.
Yeah, great points, Atul. Absolutely. And I mean, some fantastic points that you've made about, at the micro level, at each level, at the grassroots level, the changes that have to come about. And like you said, even in thought, even in, I mean, at every level, right? Because we are reinforcing those gender stereotypes just by putting that pink bathroom or the skirt. Or, in fact, I'd gone for a very interesting discussion when we talked about gender inclusivity, about including the LGBTQ community into the corporate sector, and some very interesting points came out, because they talked about, they said, in a lot of corporates, and not all companies still have a gender neutral bathroom. So you have men, you have women, and then there is no gender neutral bathroom. And the problem here is, and I myself wasn't really aware of all these little things that came into the picture till I was a part of this discussion, where they said that there are a lot of men identifying as women transitioning into women. So they don't want to use the male loo, they want to use the female bathroom. But their birth certificate, or when HR kind of onboarded them, they come as man and they can't use the woman's loo. It's as simple as that. There isn't a gender neutral bathroom. Okay, so when we talk about gender inclusivity, I mean, we're talking about women here, but we'll have to be even more inclusive to include, the entire LGBTQR community as well. So at the micro level, all of these little things, I mean, there might be intent at the management level, but at the implementation level on ground, how does this inclusivity transfer? How does it, how can we implement it? It's not just about the thought and intent, but the implementation of it also at each and every micro level, like you talked about. I mean, something as simple as feedback. Great points, Atul. Thank you so much. I'm going to head on to Madhulika now. So Madhulika, I mean, we just talked about all your achievements. So I'm wondering if I should even ask you, did you even see a glass ceiling? Did you think there was one? Did it exist for you? Really?
Oh, well. Oh my God, you've jumped straight into it. No, Hima,
let me just roll out my question to you, and then I'll hand over to you.
Okay.
Right. The first question I would like to ask you is that within the organization, all right, in your growth, in your journey to where you are today, what kind of support did you think you needed and didn't find? And what do you think that women today within an organization would be looking for career growth? I mean, and you've been on both sides. You worked in the corporate sector, you were answerable to people, you had a boss, a big boss, whatever it may be, in that whole journey of yours. And then today you are an entrepreneur, you are, founder, CEO of your own company, you probably have people working for you. How has it been different? You as a, as a person who ran your own company, and earlier in your corporate career, the growth, the path, what were the things that you felt were missing or lacking, or which you would have really appreciated in your career journey?
Oh, well, that's a huge canvas. But one sentence can you hear me? Yeah. So one sentence that I will definitely start with is, when you speak about a journey, I think it's a very natural journey. I have grown up. That's one big thing that's happened. Okay. And frankly, that is where everybody's journey takes them. Yeah. But as a young woman, when you start out in your workspace, at least in the years gone by, and today life is very different. From then, there's a lot left to be desired even today. But at that point of time, we were absolutely green behind the ears. So all you knew is that you wanted to work. This is something that you want to do. You may have decided your career path. Your parents decided. Somebody became doctor, somebody became engineer, somebody went to the army. Amongst women, somebody became teacher, whatever, But the point is that when you start out your career or your early days, you're really very green. Half the time you don't know what to expect, when you're joining an organization, when you are suddenly going to have a boss. You're going to have a boss, but you don't know what to expect in a boss and a subordinate relationship. And here I think the forces are very different. So both Atul and Sanjeev, this doesn't apply to you because you're taught very clearly who's boss and who's subordinate and who's commander and who follows, right? But let's leave the defense forces out of it. We're talking about other parts of the world. We don't know. And I will say this as well, that even in business schools, it's not completely clarified. It's not very clearly explained. These are not topics that come up in the primary courses. Okay, of course, you have the HR or the organizational education and all of that is there, but there are a lot of nuances. And when it comes to especially women, there are a lot of nuances that nobody has even thought about as something that should be considered.
You need mentors and coaching and mentorship.
Yeah, I'm just coming to that. So what I'm saying really is, which is what I was telling you. So where do you then start? Because, and I will take a minute to mention that I agree with Atul at some level when he talks about the stereotyping. But on the other side, I will also say that the stereotyping does not begin in organizations or academic institutions. It begins at home. The pink color or ladki, girls are to be seen and not heard. Ya ladke rote nahi hain, these kind of things. Now, but when you come into the world and you start a working life, if I zero it down to your point that you were raising, a very important thing which I wish had happened in my days, and I wish that it would happen now even more so, is coaching and mentoring. In these fantastic organizations that we have worked, I have worked with one of the largest MNCs of the world, right? And many others too over here do that. Even there, coaching is such an important part of grooming for, top layer work positions. But when they discuss coaching, whether it is to the for women executives or for the men executives, the focus is all on the profit and loss oriented coaching. And in some cases, HR oriented coaching. You've got a large team and people are giving feedback that you're very, very strong or whatever, aggressive as a manager. And then you get into coaching of that kind as well. Nobody looks at the coaching side, which is on anything to do with diversity and inclusion. Very, very rare. Now it started coming, and these are some of the trends and some of the changes which I'm very pleasantly happy to discover and learn about. The other thing is the mentoring part of it, okay? In the mentoring part of it, there's all certain aspects which are, again, driven more by nuances rather than a textbook process. Okay. For example, when you're working as a team, most of the people, even departmental heads like Atul, Sanjeev, yourself, all of you, everybody would, and Sangeeta, everybody would want to say, team should have some external discussions. We should have some opportunities to build team and understand each other. I remember some of my days, especially when I was the only woman on the management committee in a very large institution like Citigroup, before the next 2 or 3 years happened and a few other women reached those, categories of titles that they could be part of it. I could be the only woman there. And if everybody went for a small group of people went for a drink in the evening, I would love to go. Sometimes it was not a great experience. Sometimes it was a wonderful experience. It all depended on who you were with. So this concept of male bonding, in gender diversity is a question that comes up, yeah, and gender inclusion. So I think, and these are some of the aspects, the nuances that people in leadership, if we are speaking specifically about organizations like you addressed, people in leadership, people in HR, and your immediate bosses, and you yourself need to stand up and ask for. You need to bring it out. It's not something that happens naturally, again, because it goes back to conditioning. It's never been a priority. It's never been thought of as a priority. And nobody applies their mind to think, are there any tangible results that might come out of it which are positive if we focused on it? So
I mean,
really,
there's a missing, what they call the missing rung these days in the on the leadership ladder. Let's say there's that missing rung for women to jump, be able to climb that ladder. And I think now this coaching and mentorship that you're talking about, I think organizations are paying more attention to it in terms of trying to create a pipeline for younger women, to follow with their career growth or career path. That is sort of coming up. But like you said, these nuances about even something as simple as bonding for drinks after work, and probably this is something that women face and men may not realize. But there are a lot of people. I mean, I think Atul and Sanjeev here are very evolved in that sense, very steeped into it, and they understand all these nuances that you're talking about. But does everybody really? I don't
so
know. Atul's talking about
yeah.
little things that he's given thought to, or even when Sanjeev talked about it. So
Yes.
do know that for a fact that both of them do understand these things. But yeah, as on an average, do people really get this? Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
So coaching and mentorship.
Of course. And the thing is that it's also oftentimes, if I as a woman would want to think about something, I must bring it up. So the other thing also is that I think some confidence inspiring support is also at times required, because a lot of people, a lot of women especially, hesitate to opine very strongly. So, I mean, like in the other lady's words, a lot of women tend to hesitate on leaning in, as you call it, right? So, I mean, and tend to be a little bit self-effacing, because just as a number, they're in a minority. Sometimes you're the only one. But then if you're the only one in my kind, you probably will say it. But that isn't a generalized situation or a generalized platform. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So you
Thanks,
said that
Madhurika.
people, sorry, I just want to add this point. You said, though, the middle rung, and, again, you're very right about it. The middle rung is being tried, they're trying to develop and they're trying to groom them for top positions, but it is in the PNL focus. So these nuances.
Rung right now, I feel like it's there's going to be a challenge now, because post this current scenario of COVID-19, are those is that middle rung of women going to come back? A lot of about 2 million women have left the workforce in these times because of the circumstances. Now, we're going to come to that in a little bit, but so that middle rung might be just completely missing. There was already a gap. Now that it's going to come off, and then to jump that to leadership level might really be an issue for women. Just a minute, Madhurika. We have Puneet has joined in now. A warm welcome to you, Puneet. As I said, Puneet is a lawyer and the cyber expert on our panel today. She had to join in a little bit late because she was in court. But a very warm welcome to you, Puneet. Yeah. So
Yeah. No, so that's good, pretty much. So one thing was, do you grow up? So what I was meaning to say there is that you were learning things by accident, by experience on the job. It would help a lot if there was a structural method of coaching and mentoring on a lot of issues that you discover by accident. So that's a major part. Thanks.
Yeah. A great point. I'm going to move on to you, Sangeeta, now. So I think that you're involved with mental health and well-being, and I think in these COVID times, this has become such an issue, right? The emotional well-being of all the employees has been impacted this year, and more so for women who traditionally, are considered primary caregivers, and so for them, work from home uh, became a little more of a challenge. Now, I always thought of it in terms of flexibility at work and working from home is going to work better for women so that they can, it's just a thought that I had that when we say work from home, women are going to be doing much, much better to have that flexibility. But COVID times have just proved otherwise. And domestic violence is on the increase. Cases of domestic violence are up in this last year. And the emotional well-being of women has been really very strongly impacted. So what is your thinking on this? Is work from home a bane or boon? And how are employees dealing with these aspects? Because I think for an employee to be productive at the workplace, your emotional well-being is very important. Otherwise, how are you going to be able to work well?
Absolutely, Hima. So, when COVID started, I remember everybody, especially women, being euphoric that, wow, we are now going to be able to work from home, and the shift is really going to happen. This whole thing about feeling like they were on the back foot on many things is going to change. And very quickly, I think it was very clear that that's not how it is, right? Because it's become I don't know about the boon, but the bane and the issues and the problems of handling home and work and everything together has probably led to huge loss of productivity, huge stress, a lot of women actually having to perforce leave the workforce because that has happened, right? And I must give you an example here because I have very dear friends, neighbors, and they both working. They both have great jobs. They have a son, and now that they work from home, it's very clear that he works from the desk inside the bedroom. He locks himself up and he works from there, while she works in the living room. She shares the living room with her son, who's in classes, who's doing this. When the bell rings, it's she who answers the doorbell. So any of this, and that to me was like the living example of what is actually happening during COVID times, right? So certainly, from an emotional well-being perspective, everybody is impacted. There's no doubt about it. And I don't want to diminish um, what's happening with this gender, that gender, or any gender, because let me tell you, the data that we have shows that each gender has so many different complexities with what is going on with them. But we're going to focus today on women, so I would like to say that what is really happening, and our data is beginning to show us that when it comes to using self-help, because you put out a lot of self-help resources to help people to know more, to learn more about what's going on with them, and we find that the usage of self-help resources, just about 30% women use it, and the rest of 70% is men. And women reach out for help when it's really SOS, when they're just beyond, sort of they don't know where to go. Yeah, they don't know where to go, and that's when they turn for help to counselors, to helplines, to friends, to family, to anybody. So that is something which is coming out really, really very clearly during this time. And um, if you're thinking that oh, we need to do a campaign to encourage women to begin to use resources to help themselves more and things like that, it's not really just the women who need that help, right? I mean, just like Atul was saying, or Madhulika was saying, it is really about the entire ecosystem. And how does that entire ecosystem change? Because without that changing, it's not going to suddenly by sending out a campaign, or providing a mentor who's another woman in most cases, suddenly things for another woman will change, because what's happening to her back home is very different, and the man certainly does not have a mentor who's telling him that you need to be more sensitive around women. His mentors probably telling him about how he should grow his career, how he should, climb the ladder. So those are the things that he's hearing, while a woman is hearing about how to balance things, how to juggle things, how to put her best foot forward, so things like that. So we really are definitely not at a stage where we can talk about equality or equity of any kind. And if today, since we are having this really passionate discussion, I think this is something which we all need to accept. Another point, Hima, if you'll allow me, I just wanted to make about the factor about, because this comes up a lot in the conversations that we are having around women, struggling with the thought that, how are they going to crack the glass ceiling? How are they going to rise? And that comes up even more now with, being at home and not being visible, right? They're not being visible. So that is something. But I have a slightly different view on that. And that is that, do we want to question, firstly, what is this glass ceiling? And is this, again, something that we've been fed, men and women, that the only way to success is up and there is no other way? So those are some of the things I really invite women and men to question from a well-being perspective, because the only way to success is not up and up to the sky, because the sky is the limit and it can go beyond and beyond. But there's so many different ways and so many beautiful ways in which one can do that. So that is something which I want to leave on the table for anyone to think about, to question, and to have a different perspective.
Right. Thanks. Yeah, that's a very different way of looking things, because you're right. When we talk about the inequity, let's say, at the workplace, we are typically talking about a vertical career growth more than anything else, really. Work-life balance and emotional well-being is something that has now, and especially with emotional well-being this year, is has taken center field, right? Just because of the way employees had to, there was job insecurity, there was the stress of working from home. I remember when we would have a town hall or a call earlier, and there was a disturbance in the background for one person, and everybody would really be making eyes. Now you have cricketer, the captain of the Australian cricket team, tying his son's shoelaces in the middle of an interview, of a news interview, or we have calls, and then there's bells ringing, maids, and all of that's going on, and everybody's become a little more tolerant of it, because all of us are in the same boat, because all of us are working from home, and all of us face the same challenges. Everybody's children are working from home, everybody's husbands, wives, everyone is at home. It is a challenge,
Absolutely.
but there is
Absolutely.
that little bit of tolerance is definitely increased for all of this, because earlier I remember any kind of background sound in a call which was considered sacrosanct was just not acceptable.
So, the
So that
interesting thing is that, when men became chefs, cooking became fashionable, and so now when, men are facing the issues of having kids running around, or the bell ringing, or the cooker whistling in the background,
so
that's become fine for the men. And so therefore it has also become fine for the women. Right. So, well, whichever way it happens, at least it's happening. So I guess that's one, one good thing. I don't know. Everything doesn't need to be a battle hard one, right? Even the easy wins are welcome.
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, like I said, it's more a thing that everybody is sailing in the same boat, and so I think we just have to accept it for what it is. But moving on, thanks, Sangeeta. There was a very different viewpoint of looking at career growth, or let's say just personal growth. Sanjeev, to you now. Now in more recent years, we've been talking about men as advocates and champions of change. It's not a men versus women thing. There are men at the workplace who are being inclusive, who are at the micro level trying to make changes and all of that. But for you, I mean, you as a senior director with Credit Suisse and for corporate security, how do you enable women to make for a more, diverse and inclusive workplace? That would be the first part of my question. I'm also going to bring in a second question, because, you had brought this discussion in another panel discussion. I remember where you talked about how difficult it's going to be to get back all employees to the workplace, and more so women employees. It's going to be even more difficult. One, because like I said, that middle rung is now broken. There are 2 million women who have left the workforce for simple reasons, just can't cope up with babies and children and no more care, and just having to handle that whole thing. So how are you going to be able to get the employees back at the workplace post COVID? Question one. And since we are on gender diversity here, is it going to be more difficult to get those women back? And then then we'll talk about the security aspects of women at the workplace, which is something which is your focus area also. So
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll come to the specifics of your question, but before that, I'm going to zoom out and talk about the way I feel from my perspective. When you talked about from the male viewpoint, how the male mindset has to change. And I look at it as a kaleidoscope. A given term of reference, a given acceptance is that diversity leads to productivity. Diversity is absolutely important. It's no-brainer. Nobody's ever challenging the top. They want more and more women in more and more diverse roles at senior positions. To obviously increase their PNL, right? At the bottom line, it's the PNL, right? The company needs to do better. It can only do better if it's diversity. And that's a given. There's no debate on that. But then you have a set of problems. Some of them we discussed here. You don't have too many women as percentage of a workforce. At best, organizations have 30%, 32%, and that's an optimal figure. Otherwise, the other organizations, a large number of them are subpar. They have 15, 20%, but not very many more than 32, 33. My organization has about 30, 32%. And we think we are the champions as far as diversity is concerned. We need to do better. That's one. Second, Atul brought out stereotypes. They're very limited, very defined roles where women would like to work, or women are considered as part of the mindset that they are the best suited to work with. That's second part. Third part, we also brought out, and you brought out, Hema, that not very many senior positions are held by women. Obviously, mid-rank, you have these 33%, and all of a sudden the pyramid tapers down to 5%, 2%, 3%, and you have men all around. Now that's counterproductive, and obviously we need to change just not one, all three of them. More women, more diverse roles, breaking the stereotypes, and more promotions at the senior level. And the fourth, equally important, are the wages. This is my view that I feel not just in a certain industry, but in many, many industries, two equal men and women are actually paid inequally. And I'm a firm opinion that is also happening because of the mindset and because of acceptance of that reality. Now, this is one part of the pyramid. The other part of the pyramid is, what do we need to break this? And to break this, there's a barrier in between. And that barrier, each one of you who spoke, actually in one way or the other brought about, is our roles, the values that we as men have picked up when we were growing up. Across the board, across the continents, most in this subcontinent, when a child is born, the faces drop when a girl is born, and the faces brighten up when the boy is born. It all starts from there. The laddus come out when the girl is born. When the boy is born, the laddus don't come out when the girl is born. Or they pretend to bring the laddus out when the girl is born, right? When the girl grows up, she's given half a glass of milk. The boy is given full glass of milk. She's given, a chappal to wear, where the boy is given very cushioned. She's not expected to play sports. The boy, all this that I'm talking about, everybody knows about it. And we are growing up. And the problem is, it's not the girl who's suffering. It's the boy who's suffering, who's seeing his sister growing up, who's seeing all that is happening in front of his eyes. And therefore comes out of that statement that Atul again referred, the weaker sex, right? And he's growing up, and you're empowering his mind, you're enriching his mind with the fact that she's meant to be like this. And when he comes out of his family domain, he looks at every single other woman like that. That's the cultural barrier that we have, and that needs to break. And that's the most difficult thing to do, right? Now come to how do we bring about this change? The first thing that we need to do is not address the women, but address the men. Well, that's what I do in my organization. When I hold my sessions, I bring more men in my sessions than the women. They need to be made aware of what they've been through, how their childhood has been influenced. And believe you me, it's just not rural India. It's a large part of urban India. It's people like me who are there in the corporates also carrying this in a subconscious. It's not easy to accept, but that's how we are. That's how we men are. And that's the first barrier that you need to break about inclusivity. You need to think about women as equal. That's the first step. Second step is making the women believe what the surroundings are all about. Most of the women, when they, and each one of them wants to do well, each one of them wants to, in their own particular domain. But when they encounter men, they find all these obnoxiousness, being pushed back, discrimination, and many forms of discrimination. And they're surprised, they're shocked, because they themselves are unaware that what kind of cultural background the man comes from. A woman goes to a police station to file a report, and a policeman trivializes her for that report, and she gets aghast by the policeman's nature. What she doesn't realize is that it's the same policeman who's the same child who was born along with the sister, who was fed better, who was given a full glass of milk, who was not sent to the fields, and who was given better education. And he's seen that happening, therefore he's treating you like this. And this is something the woman must realize, that that's my environment. When she steps in a bus, in a public bus, the conductor who looks at her is also from the same background. When she goes to the court, the lawyer who is taking her case is also from the same background. She must understand the environment that she comes from. If she understands the environment, she'll be able to cope with the environment better. Unfortunately, a large number of women do not understand this, especially the women.
What are the tools that you prefer to cope? I mean, understanding the environment and understanding his background is one aspect of it. But one has to give her the tools to cope, right? One has to. So, and what are those tools going to do?
So if you understand the environment, better, you have a realization that these are the kind of my surroundings, and these are the realities of my surroundings. And I must know the realities of my surroundings. So therefore, I'm forewarned, forearmed. I carry certain weapons with me, and weapons doesn't mean I carry law with me. I carry certain other things with me, which I can actually influence and facilitate my way through. The third thing, an equally important thing, is women, and I've seen that in my experience, when they come in the position of power, they're always pushed back by small occurrences. The same man will actually respond better to a male boss than to a female boss. Insubordination, not accepting orders. And at that moment, I've seen a large number of them, they take a step back and they say, you know what, meri baat to koi manta nahi. People don't listen to me just because I'm a woman. But I've also seen same position, another woman, not bothering, not carrying any biases, just going on with her normal duties, going on with the execution of her work. And it's within a matter of days, if not weeks, people just get attuned to know that's the way I need to work. So it's firm, an affirmation of execution of a duty without a bias in your head. Women carry that bias in their head that, they may not listen to me because I'm a woman. That's what they shouldn't carry. Go about doing your business as usual. Go about doing things exactly the way another man would do. And within no time, people will align, people will listen to you, and people are going to respond to you exactly the way to respond to somebody. I've seen that happening in my own organization. I mean, there's few women who are equally strong.
That's a good point you're making. But sometimes maybe it's hard to push back on these stereotypes that you're talking about. Even understanding that this is the background that this person comes from, but having to deal with the product of that background is something that a woman has to do on a day-to-day basis at the workplace. So over and above, the work requirements and the pushing against all of these things, you have to deal with this once, even when you reach that particular position. So it is definitely challenging, right? I mean, and as Madhulika said, probably one needs a guide. Like you said, what you said also is something we need to put down in that guide as to how do you deal with it, and I think move forward, right?
That's right. That's right. And what I do specifically in my own organization is I hold these women empowerment sessions, which in the garb of empowering movement, my team carries out some self-defense sessions with them, women empowerment sessions. I teach them, I give them case studies, I give them legal opinions, I bring a lawyer in, all that. But at the same time, I talk to them and I bring out this entire reality in open. And believe you me, in my sessions, when they look at it, it's like, oh yeah, that's the reality. That
No,
inverted
you're
iceberg.
absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is something that we do too. We conduct, sessions on women's safety awareness and all of this, the legal implications, self-defense. We've trained more than 2 lakh women pan India, and the other thing is also sessions on unconscious bias, right? Unconscious gender bias. It's a need of the time. It's something that we do. A lot of organizations are reaching out to us now to conduct sessions on unconscious bias and how it affects productivity at the workplace, thought at the workplace. So this is definitely something that needs to be incorporated as part of our, what should we say, gender inclusivity, for people to understand where everybody else is coming from and how we harbor. And everybody has unconscious bias. I mean, even when I think my son says, I want to take the car, mom, and he's just 18 and a half, and I'm like, instantly I think, young boy, I can't trust him with the car. But I know he's mature, I know he's a good driver, but that thing always comes into your head, that instant bias. He's not going to be able to do it. He shouldn't be able to do it. I'm not going to let him get on the road. It's like, and these are just little things. And we're not talking, when we talk about bias, we always think about against. But bias, there's also something called affinity bias. And what do I mean by affinity bias? That instantly when you walk into a room and you find somebody from the same school or the same place, or that instant affinity you feel for that person. So there's bias, everybody has bias. You can call it affinity bias or you can call it bias against something, right? And we need to break all of those. I mean, smashing stereotypes, and it's so complicated. This whole conversation is it's such a huge canvas. It's very difficult to kind of melt it down into one little discussion for an hour, but one can go on and on. But thanks,
Hima,
Sanjeev. I think there are some great points. Yeah,
sorry,
Madhu.
I just wanted to comment with one little example, speaking to what Sanjeev said actually. When he talked about how women themselves sometimes, because of their own bias, don't this thing. There was an example in my own growing, in my years. I worked in Calcutta for a music company, a very large music gramophone company at that time, HMV it used to be called. And when I was hired as a product manager, which for new indie film music, my general manager marketing, who was my boss, he said, listen, right now you're going to have to share my secretary. And his secretary was a Bengali man who was a very active member of the Congress party. Okay. And Mr. Datta, who was the secretary, was 20 years older to me at that point in time. It took me 6 months to just work consistently and ignore every little bit and piece that I thought was, he's anti me or he's not going to do this. I just expect the work to get done. And it did eventually work, but it took me 6 months way back in, early 90s. That's all I just wanted to add to Sanjeev's point.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Madhulika. So, Puneet, can you hear me? Puneet, hi.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, thanks for joining in. I know you've had a very busy day, and thanks for coming in anyway. So we're running a little bit over time. I'll very quickly, my question to you is about, in this, today, this age and time, I think the expectation of privacy has been redefined because we are all under surveillance one way or another. Credit cards, CCTVs, the data we share online, we know that it's being mined and used to target data sharers, consumers, all of that. Now, women seem to somehow bear the brunt of it a little more for more reasons than one when we talk about cybersecurity for women. So, do you think that women need a more stringent data protection law? And what has your experience been in terms of because we know that online profiles of users are studied for information, data, demographics are stored. Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, they're all examples of how our data is being used. So where are we with data privacy? How can women be protected, especially in cyberspace and with respect to data privacy is what I'd like to you to kind of elucidate on.
Definitely, Hima. Now, one of the reasons why you would say, like, you're quite right in saying that women are vulnerable over the internet. Now, there are multiple reasons for that. The first thing is women themselves are responsible for it also. It's not just perpetrators. And the second entire thing is a lot of our society actually revolves around women. So if we may say that, okay, we are a patriarchal society, but a lot of activities, let's say if our country never had women, I think men itself would be helpless on a lot of levels. There is nothing like the entire spice of life to a great extent in our life is only contributed by women. Taking roles of wives, mothers, everything possible is actually women. And that's a fact. So we have men in our country primarily in one gender role, which is with respect to, supporting a family and doing those things, as compared to a lot of gender balance which exists abroad. So women are taking care of a lot of other needs which are there, and nowadays also including the financial. So you're looking at women having a lot of central position in society today. Now, a lot of this was not there maybe, let's say, 20, 30 years back, where they were absolutely sidelined to one part of responsibilities. So when you see this gender change also happening in our country now, where women suddenly are gaining dominance, women are getting an important position, you are also seeing women practically commanding in a lot of areas, there is bound to be a lot of retaliation towards that. So a lot of crimes against women online are also due to simply gender retaliation. Am I audible?
Yeah.
So a lot of it is due to gender retaliation. So where you see a lot of cyberbullying happen, let's say over Twitter, you see it happening on different platforms. One of the major causes of bullying is primarily out of gender retaliation today. It's difficult for people to change and come out of the mindset that, the fact is today women are there in all walks of life, in fulfilling apart from the traditional roles, they're fulfilling the modern roles, they're fulfilling everything. And suddenly now even men are being pushed that, okay, just doing this is not enough. Now, if you have to compete, you also have to do everything. So there are a lot of, you could say, undercurrents that are there. And the internet becomes a safe platform for people to retaliate. You're not identified, you can backlash in any manner, and you may not even be traced back to a great extent. So one of the reasons is this. The reason why women themselves, as I told you, could be one of the things to point at is, as women love to share too much. Now, before really the usage of internet increased, women, what was the kind of sharing? After dinner or maybe in the evening, you go down, you meet your friends in your complex or in your workspace, you share what you bought, you share a photograph and show them, okay, this is what I bought, this is what I cooked, this is where I went. And I want this new outfit, see my photograph. So you're basically going to click a picture, you would show a physical picture or you would show it on your phone. And now with social media, what is it? Today, if I've bought a new dress or if a woman has bought even a new swimsuit, she's actually uploading it for the world to see. And then suddenly you're asking for privacy. See, when you are uploading content for the world to see and you don't know who's the person who's watching. So out of the people watching you, 5 maybe your friends and the others maybe just anybody. There would be naturalist people also watching over the internet. So we have a nature of sharing, and suddenly the social media platform has provided an opportunity where we're just sharing it left, right, center. So women are responsible to the point that wherein, we need to understand where to share, how much to share. Like, honestly, I have seen on social media platforms posts by women, photographs of women, which being a woman, it's not that I'm judging them, but I know that these will be misused. They are going to face stalking with such photographs. So we can't change the mindset of people around you. So it's very easy to say, where a lot of women say, I can do whatever I want. The world should change their perspective of looking at it. Is that how it works there? Today, a woman putting a picture of her in a two-piece on Instagram or social media and expecting that men should not look at me in that fashion and not stalk me. Is that really going to happen? See, it's good for argument's sake, but the point is, you are going to face harassment over the internet. You are going to be stalked maybe physically or on the internet thereafter. Your pictures may be posted on escort sites thereafter out of harassment. So all this is going to happen as a backlash of what you have posted. So it's easy to say that the world shouldn't view me, men should not do this, but men will be men. And you cannot go and control what the person on the other side of the desktop or the mobile phone is going to do with your images and what he thinks about it. So a lot of prudence to be exercised. See, feminism is good. I can do whatever I want. I can wear whatever I want. But then you have to do it in your own privacy. You don't say, I can wear whatever I want and then show it to 1,000 people and say, those 1,000 people should think about it the way I want them to think about it. So there has to be some level of constraint to feminism thought process also. It has to be rational. So a lot of discussions that I hear around this whole subject of feminism and what women should think, do, wear, is a bit centered, I think, on illusion, especially when we are talking about the internet. So when we are talking about, the whole thing of women wanting to express their ideas through different mediums on social media, they need to be well aware of the fact that freedom of expression with people whom you know is one thing. Freedom of expression with the world in general and not expecting a backlash is not feminism, but it is stupidity at some point. So you need to be sure of who are the people you are dealing with. And definitely it's, I would say it is disrespectful for people when they retaliate badly to women over the internet. But on some level, we can also prevent it. So the point is, why become a victim when you can prevent that also? So on a lot of levels, if we have some constraint on sharing, now we all know social media platforms are sharing our data left, right, center, here and there. There are sleazy people everywhere over the internet. Now it's up to us how we want to safeguard ourselves also. So there are multiple apps, I'm sure that you're aware of, where we see a lot of cases of revenge porn. We see cases of people who are just porned and they end up, picking up pictures of women and nudifying them, putting them here and there online. So, we have a lot of perverts already existing on the internet. And whatever you are posting, always remember there is a 50-60% count of perverts who are going to view it. So don't think of feminism in your mind that I can just go about doing anything and it's my right. Think that the other person out there also has a right to watch and do whatever he wants. And then you're just going to be fighting against another person's mindset at some point.
Great points. I totally agree with you. And in fact, those are some very relevant points that you've made, because when we talk about women's security also, and this is something that we say all the time, which is that, there is, levels of security. One, you talk about what is the government doing? What are the police doing? Then you talk about organizational security. What is my organization doing for me? And I think the third and most important is, what are you doing for yourself? Like, at the end of the day, our security lies in our hands. So, that last mile has to be walked by you alone. Your company
Yes,
can do
Nima.
ABC, but what are you doing about it? I mean, are
Yes,
you
Nima.
taking
Like
your,
it's about,
when
it's a
you're,
lot about what
your
you are basically posting on the internet also. You have to be cautious. Like if you
absolutely.
know that the internet, let's say if you have a profile which is absolutely secure, you wear any outfit and you post and you won't be bullied. But if you have an account which is public and you know the world is going to watch and you're going to get stalked, then I think it's a lot of stupidity in posting content that can have backlash at the end of the day.
Correct. Great. I mean, it's been such a great discussion, because I mean, there were 5 different aspects we talked about, right? I mean, when we talked about, Madhulika talked about, as a woman, the support needed, your own attitude and ability. And she used a lovely word. Madhulika, you said something about capacitizing yourself, right? I really loved
Yeah,
that.
I mean, that was actually a
Point.
point, if I may make that sentence. The point was that a lot of questions get
Yeah.
asked as to when women are, come to childbearing age and so on, and they have a good trajectory, they're going to grow very well. The fact is that there are many women who make the choice to opt out of their career, maybe for a period of time, maybe a little longer, and some always. But there are cases that I know of who are super successful women. No glass ceiling has affected them. And once or twice, when I asked one of the ladies who's super successful, I can't name her here, and I said, what did you do? You had twins and you all were 25 and 26 at that point of time. How did you manage? And you were at an age with a career. She said, I just had to capacitize myself. And I thought it was a wonderful approach that she spoke of, because what she said is that I had to make sure that I found people who would become a support system to help me through my practical parts of my life and bringing up the children. I mean, her husband got posted in New York for a big top job. Yeah, and she also got an opportunity. And it wasn't that I'm not going to do it, or I've got twins and I can't work in America and manage everything without me. She found a way to capacitize herself to be able to do everything that was needed to be done. Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah, so I also feel that when we talk about, absolutely great point, Madhulika. I also feel that when we talk about gender inclusivity, or when Atul says that everybody has to kind of do their own thing, I feel even women have to stop bringing their sex to the work, or their gender to the workplace, right? Yep. I mean, even you have to be willing to, like you said, capacitize yourself and say that I'm going to be doing it. I'm not going to be saying that expecting different privileges. After being given the opportunity, then you have to step up to it and be able to capitalize on that and capitalize yourself and do better at the workplace, right? So again, here, I mean, there were 5 different things, like I said, where you talked about your own attitude and being having the ability to capacitize yourself. Atul talked about inclusivity and micro changes at the thought process, at the grassroots level, from at every level, being able to understand how you break those stereotypes or not have those stereotypes. So that comes with, it's not easy. It's not something like you can give an injection to somebody or like do one class, and it's a constant process, right? Because the whole concept of gender is a social construct. I mean, sex is something we're born with, man, woman, whatever, whatever gender you identify with. But the whole gender conversation is a social construct where you can't wear in a particular something, or you can't drive in a particular country, women can't drive, whatever. It's a social construct. It has nothing to do with what you were born with. And I think that if one, it's reflected in the way you're brought up, and your environment, like Sanjeev says. I mean, what kind of an environment were you brought up in? And then you can't turn around and blame that person and say that, oh, he's like this. This is what he knows. This is how he grew up. It's not a question of right and wrong or why is he doing it. For him, that's the norm. We talk about the new norm post-COVID. For that particular boy child, maybe that's the way he was brought up, where his sister was not given enough milk or wasn't even sent to school in some village areas because there isn't enough money. Maybe you can just, one child can study, so the male child studies. So, I mean, there is all of that. So like I said, one is your own attitude. Second is, like Atul talked about, the micro level changes. Third is the environment and how it affects you. Those are the changes that we need to look at. Next is the data privacy and stuff that Puneet was talking about. Is it like, how do we also conduct ourselves in our own security, whether it's data privacy or cyber security? How do you conduct yourself at the workplace and in your life in general on social media, which is going to affect, cause a kind of domino effect on everything else. And then Sangeeta talked about emotional well-being, which is so critical, because you're not going to be able to function at the workplace if there is no emotional well-being. And here you talked about the equity of, like, it is not equitable, because the way women are considered traditionally the primary caregivers. So the onus of the child or the elderly in the house does come upon them. Things are changing now. A lot of the times you see men, being home dads and the women working and all that, but it's a very, very minuscule number. It's a very 0.001%, even lesser, probably. So I think, yeah, if we were to, look at, the path forward, let's say, I'd just like to hear one quick kind of, line from each one of, in terms of, if we go forward as an organization, Puneet, from, as a lawyer, from the cyber perspective, what is the one thing that we need to work on for women? Sanjeev, at the workplace, from security point of view. Atul, from, at the micro changes that you can make at the organizational level. Sangeeta, when we talk about, emotional well-being, its impact, and the changes that maybe the organizations can make. I've just read in the paper today that yesterday it was, HUL has now created a policy which they're going to implement on supporting their staff on domestic violence. Because in the context of the current work from home scenario and the increase in domestic violence, this is what HUL has done. So, things like that, which all organizations need to do. What are the kind of steps that they can take? I mean, what is TCS? Do they have something like that in the pipeline? Because this is just something that I read yesterday, which HUL is planning to do now. Right? So, one quick line from all of you before we close up. We're 15 minutes late. My apologies on that. So, very quickly, Atul, can we start with you?
Yeah, so there are 100 things, but I just want to leave a buzzword. Don't let these be buzzwords. Let that become the buzz. Every little thing that you do, that's the only way it'll self-reinforce itself, and it will then become the reality that you so desperately seek. So don't just talk about buzzwords. Let them actually become the buzz around the office. Thank you.
Great point. Great. Sangeeta.
Yeah, so I think, picking up from what Atul said and also hearing what everybody else has said, there are many, I think, we're like one step forward, two step back is the way we've, pretty much progressed in terms of gender equality, gender equity. And the only thing is that, while there are micro steps which we can take, but those micro steps really need to count, because, otherwise the change is going to take thousands of years. It has been taking thousands of years. But the changes that we see today are because of things that people before us were very brave and have taken those steps forward despite facing so many issues in their own lives. So we need to honor that. We need to make sure that we build on that rather than regress. So when we do face adversities of any kind, the point is not to just take two steps back, maybe just a micro step back and then two more steps forward is what I'd like to say.
Great. Yeah. Madhulika.
I mean, I totally second the points that Sangeeta and Atul have already made, but I'm going to add this part of it. You know, it's not so much to do with either or, you know, working towards it. I think we have to work together. The whole issue of you know, if since we're talking only about gender equality over here, diversity, both genders, whether it is at the home or the workplace or in your social circle, both genders have to become sensitive and learned about each other and acquire that ability. And the more important than the ability is not just a buzz, but also the intention to support and improve the entire situation as they can. And yes, it's going to take long. There was a suffragette movement decades ago, you know, the right to vote to ladies decades ago. All of these ceilings have been slowly broken. So Sangeeta is very right. It's going to take some time to do it. But as women ourselves, we've got to be able to make our choices. We must decide what is it that I want to do. But just because you want to be a CEO doesn't mean I want to be one too, right? So I may want to just make sure that I'm going to focus on my children. Cool. But you make your choices with full knowledge and understanding and attention to your own self. And you are also very responsible for your tasks. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Great point. We have to take responsibility for ourselves. You can't just talk, you know, let the world say all the time that why aren't they doing this for us? You have to do it for yourself. Sanjeev, quickly, over to you.
I think Sanjeev dropped out of the call, Hema.
Oh, okay. All right. Puneet then.
As I already
Finally.
mentioned earlier, that safety over the internet is in our hands. So the first step would come about with women and men understanding that, okay, there is a difference. A man may be able to post with a lot of things and get away, because normally the number of bullies who are women is much lesser. If you see the dynamics, a lot of men indulge in cyberbullying as compared to women. So women need to exercise discretion in what they share, how they share, including sharing your locations over different social media platforms, because you can be vulnerable to a lot of crimes by that, which probably a man may not be. So understanding the gender dynamics and the safety based on your gender is also something which is very important when you're using the internet and social media. The same knowledge should be ideally imparted even in workspaces, even to children. Today we see a lot of crimes against young girls also happening. So in families also, it's important to educate both your male and your female child. Male child, obviously, not to do these acts on the internet, and female child, how to protect themselves, how to prevent oversharing, whereby they don't fall victim to such offenses.
Can I just add one very quick point, just 2 seconds, Hema, if you will allow me, just 2 seconds to add to what Puneet said, is, you know, really here also, it's not only about telling the boys and what they can't do. You know, even young boys are victims to cyber situation, cybercrime. And I mean, I'm sure she knows it better than all of us. So when it comes to children, it's gender agnostic. It's the issue is across the board, regardless of which gender you belong to. And how to deal with it is equally relevant to both. I just wanted to add to what she's saying. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Yes, of course. I mean, to be fair, one has to be gender agnostic in some cases. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this. I think Sanjeev had some network issues. He may be he said he's trying to log on, but I don't know. I'd like to throw it open. If any of our participants have any questions to any of us, we'll be more than happy to answer, though we are way over time. We're almost 20 minutes over time. But thank you, big thank you for everyone here. It was great to hear all your viewpoints, and I'm just trying to see if we have any questions here. Yeah, we do have somebody here saying, talking about victim shaming. You know, not all cyberbullying is about women in two-piece swimsuit. Puneet, I think this is sort of. I mean, you know, this is a conversation that's an ongoing conversation in terms of, you know, did women really ask for it? By putting pictures of them vis-a-vis being prudent about the kind of social media image you have for avoid stalkers. This is an ongoing conversation, and these people have very, very strong views on both sides of it. I think.
No, but definitely, Hima, to
You know.
respond to that, in India, see, you need to understand which social construct you're living in. So let's say something which is okay in the United States of America to the sensibilities of the people over there. There, men and women are used to seeing. In Spain, you have nude beaches. In India, you have a nude beach and have men and women walk there like this and see what the repercussion would be. So when we are living in a certain social construct, we know the mindset of the people. Now, changing the mindset of an entire population of a country is very difficult. So it's important that even irrespective of your gender, today, even if a man decides to post something like this, it's going to have a backlash from other men also. Equally, the way it would so with respect to women. So we are a nation which has a different mindset from a developed nation or nations where a lot of things are okay. So I wouldn't call it victim shaming, it's called sensibility. Today, if somebody in your family is posting like this, you would definitely not be comfortable with that. You know the repercussions this can attract, considering the mindset of the people in who are going to be viewing such posts. So if you're comparing yourself, let's say, with Europe or United States or developed nations, then in these countries, a lot of things are okay. They are way advanced. They are okay with so many things, and we are not going to face any backlash by that. Whereas in India, we are a very different social construct altogether, where something like this is absolutely considered out of box, where people will stand to watch. And the same thing, let's say you go to any country abroad, people will, okay, you are on a beach and it's all okay. And here people will actually stand to watch. You are in a different social construct. And your entire conduct, not just physically. So in the physical world, we are all very careful of what we are doing. When we go to a restaurant, we know the dress code. When we are walking somewhere, we know it. But over social media, suddenly we forget a lot of things. It's suddenly forgotten that you're still in the same social construct. So I don't say it's victim shaming. A person is a victim once you are exposing yourself willingly to such a situation. Yes, there are multiple cases, as I said, where people are using platforms like Nudify, where, very good pictures of women are being nudified and put over the internet. Yes, that is something where the person is absolutely not responsible themselves and a third party did. Where you yourself are putting such pictures and thereafter it is misused, then you have to take responsibility for that.
Hima, I'd just like to.
Sangeeta, you were saying?
Yes, I know we are over time, but I think this is a subject we all are feeling very passionate about. And I think, one of the things is that definitely, that we are responsible for what we do. Absolutely, we are. And we also need to be aware of our environment, the culture that we live in. We do need to keep track of that as well. But I think somewhere we also need to acknowledge that if we constantly give in to the environment that we are in and never take any bold steps, then what are we doing? I can see over here there's a comment which says, agree with Puneet, that's exactly what we discussed in our women's safety training. Be realistic and understand current realities. Things will take generations to change. But then which is the generation which is going to change? Right? Are we the generation which are also going to add to that change, or are we not? So while certainly we need to be careful about, what we post, how we behave, everything, but at the same time, the entire onus and entire responsibility of what happens to us residing only with us, I don't think that's the way society can function. Certainly, there needs to be many more things. I think it's a very unidimensional way of looking at things. There need to be so many different things that need to work alongside. So yes, to protect yourself in the moment, you may take a certain decision, but are we contributing to decisions around cyber safety laws? What is being done in cases where there's bullying? How are we educating the men who are doing these things, or any of those things? So yes, it's going to take a long time to come, but every generation, every human being, as part of society, it's also our duty to help bring about that change. I think that is important too.
Yeah, thanks, Sangeeta. Yes, we can be the change, definitely. But there has to be also a certain balance. That's what we talk about at all times, that maintaining that balance of understanding what is good for you and also being able to evolve and make that change so that society benefits, especially when we talk about gender equality. So I think with that, we come to an end of this session. I think we have one more.
You have a question.
There's a question that says, what advice to women on being ticked off very strongly by a tough but fair boss?
All
Uh,
right, I'll take that on.
Yeah.
All right, Madhulika, if you want to.
Okay, fine. All right. I'll give you my perspective on it. So first of all, you have said that it's a fair boss. Great. Very nice to hear that. My advice would be to the lady who's being given a tough feedback is that, listen, you've got to also think for yourself. When the boss is saying something, is he basing it on fact or is he basing it on an opinion? One, an opinion not based on fact, but an opinion based on some kind of notion. Two, what you are going to address on that is also should be focused on fact and not on any kind of notions that or feedback from different people about that boss. So if you can remain focused on whether you're a man or a woman, if you're getting feedback, you're dealing with your appraisal, for example, with your bosses, and if it is all based on fact, I don't think anybody has anything to worry about. So my advice is base your thinking and your approach and the words you use on fact.
Atul, you were saying.
Yeah, fine, I'll let that pass. We're running woefully short of time, so yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thanks very much. I think with that, we can end this session. It was really great to have all your views. Atul, we must talk a little more on all the things that you mentioned. It was really great for me to hear that from you.
Thank
So
you.
we can connect again.
Certainly.
On this again. Thanks everybody who's been a part of this session. We really appreciate it. We're sorry we went a little over time. A very vast subject in a very short period of time. But thanks all. Thanks, Atul.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Love being here.
Thank you very much, Hima, and pleasure meeting you, Atul, Sanjeev,
Pleasure.
Sangeeta. Great to see you again, and pleasure meeting you, Puneet.